All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions. Welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka some gadget guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series. But the QA, that's the important part, obviously stands for question and answers. We like to make this a bit more of an interactive conversation. I like to kick off my tech week, host a news show on Monday. Gives us a chance to kind of check out the news from the week before, maybe sort out our feels or if something broke over the weekend. And then we just get to kind of roll into a new tech week with a great group of people participating. So we get to kind of go through comments and questions and have a more interactive conversation. I'm seeing Jeremy Baker, J-Man150, Michael C, Control Alt Clay, Kirmo13 saying hello. PP Joker, Pontus P, Mr. Mao, uh, Darcy Coppacash, Fernando, Darren, Josh. I'm seeing a whole crew of really fun faces in here. Oliver Lundstrom, I'm here too. Hello, Oliver. I'm glad you could drop by. So, in our ongoing saga of craziness and wackiness, today is going to be an absolutely wild day. It's we do have some politics news to cover in our news block for this week's show, but I'm trying to keep this a little politics light, just given everything that's kind of going on here. I think we'd want to kick off today. The most important aspect of today would be Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and just kind of remembering what an inspiration he was to discourse and the civil rights movement and politics in general, kind of pointing out where America needed to work on keeping things equitable. To grossly oversimplify the accomplishments of a great historical figure in America. Got to throw a quick shout out. Control Alt Clay, subscribe to Prime, subscribe for 20 months and currently on a 5-month streak. Thank you very much, Control Alt Clay, for supporting the show, the stream, the channel, all this stuff. It's silly how bad I am at the Twitch, but it really does help keep the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. Every little bit helps. So, I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. We're still running crazy because of weather conditions here in Southern California. Last week's show, we had numerous issues with the stream, so apologies. I wasn't able to properly recover a good audio stream, so there were little dropouts and stuttery bits. Even for the replay last week, it got really really messy, and unfortunately, we're in for another couple days of really bad wind. So we've already gotten notices from our power company that power could be shut off. They don't know. So if this stream just suddenly cuts out or goes dark, it might be because they literally pulled the plug on what's going on here. It's been exhausting. I, all of us are kind of tired and achy and cranky, and just trying to keep everything running has been a bit of a chore. So, please pardon some of the subdued tone as we're going into this, because we do have some fun stuff to talk about. I am like not trying to just doom and gloom y'all, because there are these little shining glowing bits that I think we could have some fun with, and I really do want to try and focus on that. But there's a lot surrounding us right now that's just keeping us busy, keeping us hopping. So yeah, J-Man150, we've a yellow warning for wind here in Northern Ireland for Friday, Juan. I mean, high winds, no joke, and especially if you live in a place that kind of has slightly older infrastructure. Like suburban California is not very robust. As we've moved out to the burbs, it's pretty crazy how regularly we get these proactive power outages. Just inclement weather, we just got to shut it all down. It takes very little to disrupt this community. Pretty bold. So 80 miles an hour, winds 80 miles an hour for a yellow warning. Those are dangerous winds, and especially if it's a little drier in your area, we're once again concerned that this could spark new fires, or ash and embers from current burning fires could be spread and start up a whole bunch of new hotspots, which is why we evacuated during the fires a while back. So, hope everyone's doing well. I hope you had a lovely weekend. While the winds were calm over the weekend, see, we had like this glorious Sunday morning, and we woke up and it was just thick fog, and it looked like something out of a horror film, but it was kind of lovely to see, and especially with all of the dry conditions, that little bit of extra humidity, we were hoping like, oh, we might be getting through some of the issues here, but unfortunately, it seems the first couple days of this next week, we're gonna be keeping our heads on swivels. Our go bags are still packed just in case, and I've got batteries and solar panels ready again in case things cut out on us. So it's a lot. It's a lot of balls in the air. I'm trying to finish videos too, which I mean, we should probably just kind of kick over, uh, try and keep this show running a bit more efficiently because I actually did get some stuff out last week. I'm in that kind of creative block or creative stuck place where I've got so many things on my desk and I've got so many things that I want to cover, shoot videos on, and I'm actually now having to make these kind of judicious decisions on, well, this was going to be a video, but you know what? It just can't be. I just have to move on, and I'm getting written articles out instead. It's not exactly how I like to present some of this stuff, but it's like moving these pieces around so that just I can get anything off of my desk right now to catch up with the workload because I've been behind since Thanksgiving. Now, every time I start building up a little momentum, then we have a day of power outages, and then I start, recovering from that and getting back up to speed, and then we might shut everything down again. So let me get this out of the way here. We're gonna knock out some housekeeping. Actually, you know what? Let's start with the Patreon stuff. So these are things that are currently only on the Patreon or are early access on the patreon.com/somegadgetguy. Let me click here. We got another really great patron pregunta. Are your camera measurements actually legit? From DB. I've seen you compare phone cameras and you use the same measurements as regular cameras. Is there a way to really calculate that? Are you just looking at the shots and estimating based on comparing to a real DSLR? And I've actually gotten questions like these a couple of times. And it really speaks to me because there's like a curiosity, but then there's also like a confrontation. So often these questions are phrased directly like, well, that's just your opinion, or you're just making this up because it looks kind of like. And I really feel this speaks to a common thread in tech reviewing where we don't really have reviewers that can show their work. They're showing you examples of things, or they're doing side by sides, or they're doing comparisons, but they're really not showing their work, or they're not explaining how they got to these specific results, or why their opinions are the way they are. And I've done this in a few videos. Rightfully, someone, I think it was Georgie, pointed out that like I went and did the math and explained on the Vivo X80 Pro how I'm calculating some of these measurements. And so that was a part of that video. So again, I got this question again from DB, and I thought, you know what, let me just spell it out again. There's no magic. This is actually pretty easy math. And if you think you're curious about tech and you think you're curious about photography, this is not a difficult concept to work your way through. It looks a little intimidating at first because there are lots of numbers, but the math is actually really easy. And of course, we're talking about equivalence. So I break it all down in that article. That's the patron pregunta from last week. And if you're interested in more topics like that, we can actually talk about some math. I mean, the thing is, it's it's pretty crazy to me how tech enthusiasts, like, if I walked into a room of average consumers and started talking about focal lengths and millimeters and apertures and stuff like that, I understand why a lot of people eyes would glaze over because they're not actually that curious about photography. They take their phone out of their pocket, they take a photo of their lunch, they share that on Instagram. That's all the relationship they need with photography. But for some reason, tech enthusiasts seem to think that they really care about this stuff. And then when you really dig into the topic and you show them, I mean, this is directly comparable to this, and you can do this, and this measurement means that. Well, but I mean, like, who even cares in average consumers? So then what are we doing? You're going to spend $1,200 on a phone. Why? Oh, PP Joker, comparisons can be difficult, as one would say. I feel bad because the thing is, it's all in earnest effort. I was looking through photos that I took on the trip to India, and there are people there doing like side by side. You're at an amazing once in a lifetime opportunity. We're at the Taj Mahal, and that's a really great landmark. That's a really great subject or landscape to be shooting, and someone's out there, doing camera comparisons, and inevitably you can see as they're holding up two phones, one phone is composing and the other phone is just added. And just like I showed, like we did it a while back, I showed that Christmas tree photo here on the podcast, and then that was also on the Discord. Which phone took it better? But both shots came from the same phone, and just being a little off access. So like holding the phone in one position, taking a photo, and angling it and taking a photo, we got very different looking photos from the same phone. So if you're not composing with the same care for both devices, you're not really showing both devices achieving the same composition. So it's maddening. You really think about like, well, how do I want to stage a comparison, or why do I think pairing these two cameras is important? And unless you're setting up laboratory grade consistency, then I don't feel you're really delivering a comparison. You're kind of just leaning into your personal bias, and you're composing for whichever phone you like better. But we can save that for another longer diatribe on this channel. Moving right along, let me get back into screen share here. I've got early access on the H2O Audio Tri-2 Pro bone conduction headphones, and I think these might be too sporty for me. I loves me some bone conduction headsets. I thought I had this on my desk. So here I am, like I've got so many things on my desk. And when I really want to hold something up and show it off, it's on the floor right now. But this video is early access. It will be going public at some point, probably this week. But it's a competitor to one of my favorite brands, Shox, is a bone conduction headset. This one is, I mean, Tri-2 Pro is named appropriately because we're talking about something that the company is rating for triathletes. So not only is it going to be vaguely water resistant to sweat, it's designed to be used by swimmers. And then, of course, it's also got built-in audio playback capabilities, so you don't have to depend on a phone with Bluetooth. It's got 8 gig of storage if you want to run not only your own MP3s, but you can also record a playlist. It's a pretty cool feature where, let's say your favorite workout playlist is on Qobuz, you can play that playlist and have the headphones record it directly to the built-in storage. So really, really fun stuff there. Full review, kind of a longer term review. I've had these for a bit because it's been difficult getting gadgets off my plate. Here's one that I did have to switch. So this was originally going to be a video. I've been trying to work through these for a while now. I have the Pixel Buds Pro 2 here in the Gadget Lab. And unfortunately, it just doesn't make sense anymore to try and put this into a video. So I've done a written review. The Google Pixel Buds Pro 2 long-term review. Smaller, but not really smaller, question mark. So that's a pretty important question mark. That question mark is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the title of that article. And this is a pretty long review. I mean, what would have been a video, probably would have ended up being like a 10 or 12-minute video on the Pixel Buds Pro 2. But I have a lot of thoughts. And I also have, I'm kind of breaking my rule. I mean, we just spend time, like every single time I do this, I kick my own stuff in the rear. I just went through this whole thing why I have this philosophical issue with turning reviews into comparisons. I don't like putting comparative examples into a review because a review should be about the product and a comparison is a different kind of commentary. It's okay to wrap your review and say, hey, there are competing options, but you don't want to build the entire review by saying, oh, why buy a OnePlus when a Google is better? You know, like if you start with that as a premise, you can never have a review. You're just hiding a comparison under the name of a review. So of course, in my Pixel Buds Pro 2, like describing things like audio quality is maddeningly difficult because every ear is funky and different. And even when you plug earbuds into microphones so that you can record a frequency response or you can say this is the quality of the earbud, those microphones are not going to resemble the bends in your ear. So the best you can hope for is starting to listen to people and they're like, oh, well, they're talking about this experience, and that's been kind of my experience. So we might hear things kind of similarly, but even that is a difficult bridge to cross. So if you're a mids junkie like I am, these earbuds still might fit you better or worse than they fit me. Just because we like similar tuning doesn't mean that we hear things the same way based on the structure of our ear. So I'm trying to express that, and I have these like disclaimers just like populating throughout this review on the Pixel Buds. But I had to bring in like in on my ears when we talk about audio fidelity, when we talk about clarity, when we talk about lows. This is an experience that I was having, and I really didn't enjoy what the Pixel Buds were reproducing. I really didn't enjoy what they were, how they sounded. So it's a lot of, man, I hate doing this, but I've got to mention that so that you can understand where I'm coming from. But I still don't feel like that's what should make a purchasing decision for you. My experiences don't make a purchasing decision for you. There's genuinely no way to know if your experiences will be the same on these earbuds because your ear is shaped so much different than how my ear is shaped. So it's a lot. And then this is another fun coup. Shortly after CES wrapped, last week, we were talking about one of my favorite announcements from CES was the Halliday smart glasses. And literally that evening, I was able to meet up with one of the representatives of Halliday as they were in LA. So amidst all of the fires, I drove down to Westwood, California, and got some hands-on time, a first look at Halliday glasses, and my sort of thoughts and a quick write-up of my experience in checking out a new pair of smart glasses is over on the Patreon right now. I'm hoping to have a video out very soon. Because you might notice as I share this photo right here, those glasses look cool and they don't have lenses in them because they're prototype glasses. And I think I look pretty good in glasses. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe I have access to the Halliday glasses right now. Maybe right now, as we speak, I have smart glasses on my face. You don't know. You have no idea. But maybe that's a thing that can happen. We'll have to see. We'll play it by ear. But maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, there might be a more in-depth video on what I think is one of the most exciting areas that's starting to bubble back up again when we talk about heads-up displays, better notifications, better at a glance, putting a smartwatch up at eye level. those kinds of things I think matter. So it's pretty great. And then publicly over on somegadgetguy.com, this was just kind of like a week of really fun audio and bone conduction because I got to test drive and review the Shox Open Meet UC. It's a wireless headset. Never seen bone conduction like this. It is a wild new design from Shox, formerly Aftershocks. This is an office headset that is completely different. So I have, you've probably seen me use the older Shox Open Com. This is the Shox Open Com, and it's basically just an Aftershocks headset where they stuck on a little boom mic. And it's okay. It's honestly like it's a good headset, but it's not one of my favorites if we're talking about office productivity, taking calls, things like that. But you have seen these in a lot of my live streams and interviews. This is what I was wearing all the time when TK and I were doing best of our week. I love having an open ear experience and I like going wireless. The Open Meet from Shox, completely different driver housing and design. I mean, this is a brand new from the ground up. They're not recycling one of their current products. They're building something fresh, and it's really exciting to see them kind of approach a different kind of product from a completely different perspective. So that's public. You can catch that one already on the YouTube channel and on somegadgetguy.com. And lastly, just kind of stoked to get this one out too. This was supposed to come out like right before CES. And that really didn't happen. But the video is no new phone for the holidays. Let's clean up your old phone. Just taking a revisit on the OnePlus 12 and how grody my OnePlus 12 was looking after a year of pretty consistent use. It's it's kind of funny to me. Like, I'm doing this with a OnePlus 12. A OnePlus 12 is still bleeding edge tech. A OnePlus 12 still puts a hurt on phones like the Pixel 9 Pro. But if you use a phone consistently, even after a year, you can get that thing looking pretty roughed up. So I detailed like trying to do it cost consciously for 20 bucks, what I was able to do to not only clean up, but also kind of deliver a bit of that new phone feel. And it's not hard to deliver some novelty, get your fingertips kind of feeling like you're using a new phone, but then also still have something familiar. Because I think we're also kind of wired for both. It's funny, we're fighting novelty and familiarity. We want something new, but we also don't want anything new. So instead of spending $1,000 on a new phone, when it starts to look a little worn, it starts to age, the case is starting to kind of yellow or tint or something like that, 20 bucks. I spent 20 bucks and it feels like a brand new device. So it's again, it's like something, the stuff that we all know, but also just kind of a call to say like, hey, what other tips and tricks do you have? What do you do to spruce up and clean up an old phone? And I've gotten some great responses, some great replies. So I might actually put together a viewers respond kind of a video, just because I feel like more and more people kind of, I don't know, they it's like we want them to feel good about not buying something brand new, right? I don't know that the new phone purchase is as exciting as it used to be. I think a lot of people feel like it's a chore. So if there was a way for you to kind of get some of that feel, but not go through the whole process of setting up a new device, I think a lot more people would feel empowered by that. Just kind of get happy about that, make it exciting that you're not flipping a phone, trading it in, putting it in a landfill. I think that's like a message worth reinforcing. So it's good times. Let me take a quick drink of coffee here, just to double check where we're at, and then I think we can get to some news. This is like one of the more efficient housekeepings that I've done in recent memory. Oh, Rob Albano. I just wanted to share that my Vivo X200 Pro is going to arrive any moment, and your review inspired the purchase, upgrading from an Xperia 1 Mark V. Thanks for all your great content, SGG. Hey, Rob, I am really excited for you. I have definitely been enjoying my time with the Vivo X200 Pro. I'm going to be getting that camera review out soon-ish. I'm almost done with the camera review on the Oppo Find X8 Pro now that it's had a couple big updates. I finally went out and finished shooting all of the content I need for that, just to kind of do the comparisons in the photo and the looks and stuff. Coming from an Xperia 1 Mark V, I think you're in for a treat on things like how good that telephoto is. That new telephoto sensor, close focusing optics, you don't lose 4K 120. It kills me like every time you walk away from like a Sony, you've got to trade out some features. You're not getting that memory card, you're not getting that headphone jack, but things like 4K slow motion, so good. So good. You're seeing that more and more in my current videos. Like I'm putting that X200 Pro to work before I've even finished reviewing the phone. So I think you're gonna dig it. It's really good times. Um, Dave Burns. The Shocks video was rad, but unfortunately I don't work in an office anymore. See, I'm kind of torn on that. So bone conduction is open ear. So some people, I feel like they want that awareness of what's happening, and other people are going to be like, no, 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 no open ear for working in an office. It's going to be too distracting. Oh, PP Joker, I'm really sad to hear that. I wish I could clean my laptop. I ended up borking one of my RAM slots. I'm still kind of bitter about it. It's tough. We try to take care of these things, and unfortunately, those kinds of mistakes happen. And it's getting harder and harder to find good info on things um, good repair shops. You know, you bork a RAM slot on a motherboard, and unfortunately, I think a lot of shops now, it's can you even fix something like that? Could you disassemble, resolder? That's it's kind of crazy in my brain how we've gotten to a point of disposability for something like now laptops and desktops are kind of trending in the same direction. Another one, David Burns. One, the OnePlus 12 betrayed me by coming out one whole year ago. It's pretty funny. From Mr. Maug. It was cool the fact that I was able to get the OnePlus 13 with the Watch 2 and some cases and the AirVoog charger for under $1,000. That's a pretty good score. That's excellent pricing on that. Again, I feel like the OnePlus 13 is ruthless competition against an iPhone 16 Plus or a Galaxy S25 Plus. It's tough. It's tough looking at all those different products and then like how OnePlus is kind of significantly undercutting competition for stuff like that. And one more from Dave Burns. One, if you heard what my apartment sounds like, open ear is not doable. So, why don't we jump into some actual news? Because I wanna get through the downer stuff. Kind of just highlight a few things that we need to keep watch on, stories that will develop over years, and then from there we can. I'd like to just kind of spend a little time on the fun stuff, and it's just exciting wherever you are in gaming because I'm in a weird place in gaming right now. But even for that, it's just exciting whenever Nintendo does something kind of big. And it's interesting to me how quiet this big thing is. So why don't we kick this off? We do have two political stories that, like I said, we just need to stay abreast. And one is a little disappointing because of how positions and roles change with incoming and outgoing presidential administrations. This is one that I feel is going to be a bit delicate. So, coming by way of John Brodkin, my man crush over at Ars Technica, FCC chair makes one last stand against Trump's call to punish news stations. Taking action in the final days of the Biden administration, the Federal Communications Commission dismissed 3 complaints and a petition filed against broadcast television stations. FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel said the action is important because, quote, the incoming president has called on the Federal Communications Commission to revoke licenses for broadcast television stations because he disagrees with their content and coverage. And unfortunately, the incoming chair for the FCC agrees with the incoming president that the FCC should not be a regulatory agent protecting the concerns of citizens in the United States, but that the FCC should be a sword that a president can use to punish news coverage, broadcast coverage that the administration does not agree with. So we've got one last action by the current FCC denying these petitions. But moving forward, if someone's overly critical of the president, we're going to have to see, we're going to have to watch, how does the FCC respond? Does that mean an MSNBC is going to be penalized? Or will their license be revoked and they just won't be allowed to broadcast? This is sort of a cornerstone of discourse and how we inform citizenry. It's fundamentally broken, but it's all we've got for so many people out there. And how is this going to influence discourse? I've been running into these issues as a quick tangent because I'm not a free speech absolutist. I very much disagree with free speech absolutism, and I find most people who call themselves free speech absolutists probably aren't. But one of the main talking points is, well, if the airwaves are being spread with misinformation, the only way to combat that is with good information. But we've seen a certain trend in fact checking, for example. Well, we can't have that on social media because then if you fact check much, we find that certain voices are completely shut out of the conversation because they only exist to spread information. Well, what about free speech? So the other side of that is, if someone is doing fact checking, and if an outlet, a news organization, cable news, local news, some type of entity is doing fact checking, well, why not just revoke their license? If we don't like what they have to say, we'll just pull the plug. So again, we can't. We seem to see this going in mostly one direction, where there's a precedent or there's a legal history or there's just sort of an established agreement, sort of an unspoken, it's not codified into a specific law, that this is just how we've always worked. And those types of legal, or I guess institutional, I should say, those types of institutional arrangements have all been kind of thrown out the window over the last, I don't know, I would say over the last 12 years. What we've kind of accepted, like, oh, well, this president gets a Supreme Court appointment. Well, that's the way it's always been, but we disagree now. So we're going to change the rules when it's the other side's turn to appoint a Supreme Court justice. And for some reason, we just let that happen. Well, we've always kind of agreed that the FCC exists to do this. Well, we don't agree now. Now we think that the FCC should be able to penalize people that criticize the president. And then it just sort of happens. So we desperately need to watch and see what we can do to push back against overreaches of power, silencing critical speech. If you believe that free speech is worth protecting, then this should be very concerning to you. As I think his name, Brendan Carr, steps into the role of chairman of the FCC. This is, we were in the wacky hijinky days of Ajit Pai under the first Trump administration, and there's a lot of damage done to that regulatory body just in the shenanigans of, oh, you have an oversized coffee mug and aren't I so wacky, and you can still get all your memes even without net neutrality. It seems like this is going to get even more serious. So the complaints, again, I would hope that you read this article. ABC's fact-checking during a presidential debate, editing of a CBS 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris, NBC putting Harris on a Saturday Night Live episode, Media and Democracy Project filed a petition to deny a license renewal for WTXF TV in Philadelphia, station owned and operated by Fox, alleging that Fox willfully distorted news with false reports of fraud in the 2020 election that Trump lost. Um, that should be pretty concerning. Moving on. Another one that is just going to be interesting to watch because we don't really have good regulatory policy here in the United States, and we've missed huge opportunities to do things like regulate big data and social media. We're having to turn to the EU for any type of corrective action on big social media sites. Brussels orders X, Twitter, to hand over documents on algorithm. Brussels has ordered Elon Musk to fully disclose recent changes made to recommendations on X, stepping up an investigation into the role of the social media platform in European politics. The expanded probe by the European Commission, announced on Friday, requires X to hand over internal documents regarding its recommendation algorithm. The Commission also issued a retention order for all relevant documents relating to how the algorithm could be amended in the future. In addition, the EU requester requested access to information on how the social media network moderates and amplifies content. So this is also why I take some exception to calls of free speech absolutism. Oh, well, if someone's spreading bad information, you need to fight it with good information. We can't moderate or police this content. Deplatforming, what's that? But we don't have a system where we can combat purposely spread bad information, and especially once state actors get involved amplifying misinformation, you can't just good info your way out of that indoctrination. Bad information has a way of spreading and weaponized. It spreads at a scale that then simply correcting it is insufficient. So here, the EU is very concerned about how speech is proliferating on a platform like Twitter, and that this isn't just an organic spread. The platform is distributing some information above other pieces of information, and that weighs on how you can correct or how you can clarify the information on a topic. As soon as a social media site is algorithmically driven, like Twitter, like Instagram, like Facebook, like YouTube, as soon as your feed is managed by a piece of software whose primary concern is maximizing your attention and time on site, you do not have an equal presentation to combat bad information. So as soon as that person starts down that rabbit hole of bad information, the algorithm is all too happy to keep feeding them increasingly bad information. So it's a massive issue that we have when we discuss speech in the First Amendment and free speech in the United States, is that we've allowed a system that defends lying. But after a point, it's not just lying. This is the information that outside entities can use to destabilize our political conversations, our political action, our communities, have neighbors at each other's throats. And I feel we're cresting into an area where we wouldn't defend in-person speech that was designed just to hurt people. We can bring up the example of, like, you run into a crowded movie theater full of people, and then you just start yelling fire because all you're trying to do is incite panic, and people are going to be hurt when they trample over each other to get out of that building because you've erroneously said there's a fire. We don't claim that that's protected speech. Speech that exists simply to disrupt, chill other people's First Amendment protections, or to hurt people isn't classified as protected speech. That's not something that's covered under the First Amendment. So we have this issue where, for some reason, we're letting private companies that operate these massive social media platforms, we're treating them like they're the public square. We're treating them like they're public entities, but they're private companies. And then we're also trying to say that anything that happens on there, well, we can't moderate. We can't use a private company's moderation team to root out weaponized misinformation because we've got to protect free speech. And you can see where those ideas kind of conflict. For some reason, we understand the scenario of purposely trying to hurt people with speech, crowded movie theater, but when speech on social media is used to destabilize political conversation and then that rolls over into loss of life and destruction of property, just because it happens a little slower, we act like, but that's fine. That's protected speech. And I don't see where they're fundamentally different. If speech on a social media platform is designed simply to cloud the waters, sow discontent, and then eventually weaponize vulnerable people into doing dangerous things, then I don't see how that's fundamentally any different than walking into a crowded movie theater and yelling fire. We covered this during the pandemic. All the way back in the pandemic, years ago, we were talking about how information from outside of the UK was misinforming UK citizens on how things like cell phone towers worked and was linking 5G radio reception not only to diseases like cancer, but then also to things like that emerging COVID uh, pandemic that we all suffered through. And that got to the point where people were torching 5G towers around the UK. So that to me is kind of a good example. It took a little longer than just trampling people in a movie theater because you incited panic, but that speech was still used to misinform a population, incite panic, and it led to the destruction of telecommunications equipment and only served to destabilize communications throughout the UK. And then we found that one of the sources of this misinformation was Russia. So, like, should we protect that as free speech? I don't think we should. So, again, it seems to be in one direction if you fact check, well, that's bad. So we can't have that. But the only reason to get rid of fact checking is because you want to purposely misinform people. Again, to me, it's the flip of that argument. Well, if you've got nothing to hide, you shouldn't be afraid of the government digging through all your stuff. Well, if your speech is at least earnest, if you actually do care about the message you're trying to serve up, you shouldn't be worried about a little fact checking. In fact, you should welcome it because that would help you with your arguments. If what you're saying is earnestly believed and earnestly you feel is earnestly true, then you shouldn't be concerned about Facebook moderation. So those are our two core political stories. We're done with politics. I'm not digging into the other events of the day, and I am woefully unqualified to talk about other things like the anyway. Um, I just felt like those two were kind of in my wheelhouse. I feel confident that I can address FCC concerns and the proliferation of digital speech. So anyway, we'll need to keep an eye on what happens in the EU, whether or not Twitter even responds appropriately to this request from Brussels. And then if we get a peek behind the curtain, I think it'll be interesting to see how does this algorithm boost information? I feel Twitter is going, this is my prediction, and then we're going to move on. This is my prediction. I feel the people currently running Twitter are well versed in what Facebook studied years ago. If you keep people angry, you keep people scared, you keep people miserable, they'll stay on your social media site longer. So then you encourage a whole bunch of bullies on the platform basically just to run roughshod over the earnest participants on Twitter, that they're only there to disrupt conversation, to pick fights, and that the people who earnestly believe in things will actually stay on Twitter longer miserable. But if you cultivated an algorithm that spread good information, made people happier, made people feel better, they'd probably go out and touch grass more often. And that's bad for Twitter. That's my prediction. If any information makes it to Brussels, I am very confident that Twitter's current algorithm strategy is basically just a mirror of Facebook's at this point. So we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll see. From H2O Taco, yeah, I mean, spot on, man. I don't need fact checking. Whatever I agree with is true. Do your own research. Am I right? Up top. It's pretty great. Let me take another drink of coffee, and then we've got some AI news that's just kind of wacky. Some back-to-back AI stories. So hold on one sec. Okay, so first up, the interesting story. They're both interesting stories, but the interesting story to me is we've been talking about AI, news, and search. I feel AI has basically gotten to a point in search where it's just content theft. It serves no purpose other than to separate the person searching for a topic from the humans that actually did the research and answered the question. You have a question, you go to the google.com and you type in your question, and then you get an answer right in the search page. But that answer came from humans who actually did the research, and there's no guarantee that the answer you got on the search page is accurately quoted from the humans who really answered the question. I brought up the example of during the World Series, where we were seeing that issue with fan interference out in the outfield, a fan grabbing the ball that could have landed in the field. What is the appropriate reaction? And before the officials could make a ruling on the field, my dad looked up what it should be, and he says, like, oh, well, according to this Google search, the batter's out. But that's obviously not true. The batter hits the ball goes way out to the outfield, and it wouldn't have been a home run. It would have hit the wall and landed in the field, but someone in the stands interfered with that play. So AI looked at information in my dad's search and said, oh, but if you catch the ball, the batter is out. So AI just created this word salad that was completely incorrect on what would go down in that scenario. And obviously, the officials came back out on the field, and the ruling was not the batter was out. That was unfair. It would have been punitive to the batter for a fan interfering with the play. So AI keeps getting this stuff wrong. And it's getting it wrong so much that Apple is currently pulling the plug on AI news summaries. Now, this is from Yahoo Tech, by way of the Telegraph, I should say. Tom McArdle over at the Telegraph, but I caught it here on a Yahoo Tech repurposing or regurgitating. Now, I also want to show this off because I think this is hilarious. The Telegraph has written this article. Tom McArdle has written this. Apple drops AI news summary feature that wrongly claimed Rafael Nadal had come out as gay. And they have this little screenshot of it. BBC Sport. Luke Littler faces Michael van Gerwen in PDC World Championship final. Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal comes out as gay. Immediately under the headline, Yahoo as an AI summary. So there's a little AI button here. Yahoo is using AI to generate takeaways from this article. This means the info may not always match what's in the article. Give me the pop-up back. Reporting mistakes help us improve the experience. In an article about AI, Apple walking away, pulling the plug on AI summaries in Apple Intelligence. Yahoo has an AI summary of this where their pop-up is the summary might not be accurate. So I just want to see real quick. I haven't clicked on this. Um, uh, so this is the summary. This is how helpful this is. Apple's artificial intelligence news tool falsely claimed tennis star Rafael Nadal had come out as gay, leading to its suspension. So basically, they just regurgitated the headline. Okay. Secondly, the BBC and the New York Times were among the news outlets misrepresented by the AI tool, prompting complaints and concerns about accuracy. Apple has temporarily suspended the feature and is working on improvements following backlash from news organizations. So, how much of that really helped you summarize this experience? If you had just read the article, because the article is not that much longer, the article is about twice as long as the summary, and that summary was pretty short. I probably just burned 2 water bottles worth of water in cooling a data center to click that little down arrow for a potentially inaccurate summary of an article that wasn't very long. So shame on Yahoo. But also, we all need to laugh at Yahoo's expense because that is like the perfect example of here's what's wrong. We're reporting on what's wrong, but we're also doing what we're reporting on. It's so wild. Um, hold on, let me see if there was from Tan May. Isn't Apple using Google Gemini? Apple Intelligence is Apple's own framework, and then there are ways to insert other language models into it. So again, it's all just a messy conflating of what is AI, and it's just silly at this point because there still isn't any foundational business model that makes any sense. But if you get to a certain point using Apple's built-in iPhone tools and then you feel like you want some other interaction, we can plug ChatGPT into Apple Intelligence to kind of further that experience. And I just don't see where people are really clamoring, consumers especially, are really clamoring to do any of this. From Nikkei. He's also not Brazilian. Yeah, Rafael Nadal, not Brazilian. From Michael C. They also have a contract with OpenAI, so I think Apple is leaning on both of them to create Apple Intelligence. The other day, I asked ChatGPT who played Coach on Cheers, and they told me John Ratzenberger. I explained that that wasn't right, and they proceeded to guess a different name and a different name. 15 questions later, they were telling me it was Bruce Willis. Even when I gave them the initials, they were getting it wrong. I just gave up after 15 queries. It, it's not meaningful information. And this is why I'm pointing out, like, I'm glad Apple is pulling the plug for now, but we know they're going to come back to it because they want products and services that people stay siloed into the Apple ecosystem. That's where Apple can really monetize new services, serve you ads. We know it's going to come back. Just right now, it's embarrassingly bad. And we gave up good traditional search that would take you to a website with the answer to your question, where the person who answered your question would get the reward of traffic from your search. And instead, we're all trying to keep people just using the platforms, the algorithms. We want you stuck right here at the expense of the people who have all been stolen from, all at the expense of all the people who did the work. So the flip side of that, as if this wasn't hilarious enough, seeing Yahoo stumble and fail with AI in a story about how bad AI is, unfortunately, those of us who are kind of stuck on certain pieces of business software have more AI to contend with. This is the blog post from Microsoft.com. CoPilot is now included in Microsoft 365 personal and family plans. And I'm going to skip all this. Excuse me, none of this means anything. CoPilot in PowerPoint, CoPilot in Excel, CoPilot in Outlook. Ooh-wee, it's so fun. To reflect the extensive subscription benefits the extensive benefits that we've added over the past 12 years and enable us to deliver new innovations for years to come, we're increasing the prices of Microsoft 365 Personal and Family in the US for the first time since its release by $3 a month, at $36 a year. Existing subscribers won't experience a price increase until their next renewal. So this all fired up on my systems. Started writing a script for a fancy pair of smart glasses that may or may not be in my possession right now. There's no way to know if I have access to these glasses or if I'm using them or if I'll have a video out on them soon. It's kind of an unknown. This is a very prototype, a very early build, very early hardware that was shown off at CES. And I think we should be really excited about heads-up display glasses, but we can't confirm or deny whether or not I'm using them as we speak, if I can actually see a heads-up display that you can't see and that you can't detect. Who knows? I mean, you can't know. I fired up and I started writing a script, and CoPilot pops up in Word, and it is the dumbest. There's just like a gray text CoPilot sentence at the beginning of my Word document now. And I dump a bunch of information in there and I say, like, give me a framework for a script on this. And all it did was reprint the information that I had given it. So like, that's not a framework, that's not a script, that's not a useful document. You just repeated what I pasted into the document. So then I also took a look at an older document that I'd written, and getting the summary, it's like, yeah, it's getting some of the bullet points, but it's actually missing things that I think are really important. So that summary is not useful. If I had just read that summary, I would have missed some really important stuff in the remainder of that document that had been cut out by this AI. So thankfully, we understand that our customers have a variety of needs and budgets, so we're committed to providing options. Existing subscribers with reoccurring billing enabled with Microsoft can switch to plans without Copilot or AI credits like our basic plan, and for a limited time to a new personal classic or family classic plan. So I've spent, I don't know, like 3 days, 2 days, something like that, just kind of futzing around, like dumping stuff into Copilot, watching it not deliver anything of value. I'm gonna be turning it off. I'm not gonna pay an additional $36 a year on top of what I think is a reasonable subscription price. Actually, the Microsoft 365 family plan is a pretty good buy. You get for the cloud storage that you get and the Office document support that you get. It's actually not terrible. But I'm not gonna spend 30% more on an AI feature that delivers almost no value. So we're going to be switching to a family classic plan of Microsoft 365. But as you're firing this stuff up, if you're on Microsoft Office, you might notice some new prompts that pop up. And that's another thing that really ticks me off is I did some very general stuff. I'm admitting that what I did was maybe overly simplistic. I copied a press release into it and I asked for a framework for a script. And according to guys like Altman and over at OpenAI, my problem is that I'm too dumb. That's basically what he's saying, is you're not getting the full value of AI because you're not engineering your prompts. And there's going to be this whole thing, like for organizations and for businesses, to get the most out of AI, you need to go and hire prompt engineers. But that was never the promise of LLMs, machine learning, AI. It was that you were supposed to have these natural language conversational experiences with your computer and get more value out of that. Now look at how immediately that fell apart when these tools started getting pushed at scale. And now they're trying to convince people, well, the problem is that you're an idiot. You're too dumb to use the AI. The AI is too smart for you. So what you need is someone with specialty credentials who can engineer to get the right experiences out of the AI. And that's BS. That is like such marketing spin And again, it's to elevate some people to make them feel special. I'm a prompt engineer. No, you're not. All you're doing is just feeding information into an AI and trying to get some kind of reasonable output that a human could have generated. You're not doing anything special. You're just word salading your query so that you get a better word salad out of the AI, but it's still without any meaning or context. A human still has to take that information and deliver the meaning and context. So, yeah, I'm not impressed. I haven't been on the CoPilot train at all. CoPilot was the dumbest thing to market new Windows PCs, Windows on ARM. I love my Surface laptop. Surface Laptop 7 is the best laptop I've ever owned. It might be the best laptop I've ever reviewed. I flippin' love this thing. The Copilot is the dumbest part of the experience. It matters zero to my enjoyment of the product, and because of the stupid Copilot key, it was actually a detriment that I then had to go and install Power Toys to remap that Copilot key into something actually useful. So that's where I'm at. So Michael C, $70 a year for Office 365 was already terrible value, but sometimes I would grab them on sale for like $36 from Walmart. This makes me want to just sail the seas of cheese. So the personal Microsoft 365, I don't think is as good a deal. But if you weigh that with like OneDrive storage, and there are some other perks for like Skype, if anyone's still using Skype, but the family plan is actually a pretty good deal. You got to weigh like everybody getting their own OneDrive account, and that cloud storage has come in clutch. I use a separate account for the Patreon than I do for my own personal cloud storage. Like that kind of stuff really has helped. And because both Marie and I are stuck in business relationships and in contracts where we need to use Microsoft Office, it is kind of the best way to keep all of that stuff floating at a fairly reasonable price. Personal, maybe not as good, but it's one of those things you kind of gotta weigh the pros and cons of competing features. I'm talking to someone who's he just got Microsoft 365 Personal because he works as a therapist. So document support was a really big deal as he's working with clients and working with patients. And you can't get away with LibreOffice on something like that. Again, it's like you've got to. It's not a great price, but it's the best price for the exact situation that he's in. There is no Apple corollary. Google Docs don't fulfill that need. So you end up stuck in this one position, but adding $30 a year to making that personal subscription $100 a year is not a good buy and is not going to help him. And also, I would be concerned over like HIPAA. There's all this talk in here. We're committed to AI privacy. We recognize that our customers have questions about AI privacy, including how we train our models. Well, if you're a therapist, you've got to deal with medical records. Boy, howdy, are you not going to want to pay $36 a year for AI to go snooping through all your stuff? It doesn't matter what Microsoft claims they do to protect your privacy. If the point of failure is the human, or if the human makes a mistake or information gets out because of these systems, the human is going to be liable. And just having the AI plugged in is a potential vector for abuse or for mistakes or for disclosing things that should not be disclosed. So you got to nip that in the bud. We've got to manage it ourselves, right? It's on the humans because the liability will not fall on Microsoft just because they made a potential area of error that a human could fall into. Unfortunately, the buck stops with the human. So again, I'm going to have to actually, now that I say this, I'm going to have to reach out to my friend there and say, hey, by the way, check that this is happening because you probably don't want the AI. Yeah, Tanmay, OpenOffice and Google Suite has basically everything I need. They're great. My daughter's on LibreOffice. I would highly recommend. Actually, if you're on OpenOffice, I would recommend checking out LibreOffice. It's been awesome showing her how to use LibreOffice. But when you're in an industry that needs document compliance and compatibility, and they're working on Microsoft Docs, then Google Docs doesn't get it done, and that's just the way it is. So you're kind of in the same trap as people who claim they can't leave Adobe. So we use LibreOffice a lot, especially when we're doing stuff with my daughter. I have no problems firing up LibreOffice to write scripts, and I can save those in the cloud just like I save my Microsoft documents on OneDrive. But the second I interact with a client who has a specific need for a certain document compatibility, LibreOffice translation isn't going to get it done. From Michael C. I mean, Word is okay, but it's not $100 a year better than Google Drive or OpenOffice. So that's not why we've maintained our family plan, though, because it's not just can I use Word, it's can I use Word and do I get a terabyte of storage per person for 5 accounts? So what is the cost of Google 5 terabytes of cloud? Someone drop in the comments, how much would it cost to get 5 terabytes of G Drive? And just let me know. Because something tells me it's probably not going to be the same cost as a 365 family plan. So I'm just putting that out there. I don't know. You know what? You guys can school me right now. You can just make up a number. Who knows? But it's not just that as part of the package. I'm not on Microsoft 365 because I love Word. Like I just said, I could accomplish that with LibreOffice. It's a few other things that also contribute to why we continue to pay for 365, but why we're not going to pay for 365 with CoPilot. Oh, tangential tesseract. This is dicey. Tangential Tesseract says, I work for a major multi-state healthcare provider. They added a GPT-based assistant surprisingly early on and passed the buck with warnings to users, don't violate HIPAA. Trusting regular nurses and such with that in our cloud, but holy heck. Oh man, that's brutal. Wow. Hey, by the way, when you interact with our chat client, don't violate your privacy. Okay, bye. See, and again, if we had actual regulators in this space that could go after major tech corporations, then we would have fewer of these instances where people are just given access to tools that they could make mistakes with that would then violate patient confidentiality. On Tenmei, I'm happily using my NAS. I have a NAS too, and sometimes it's still nice to have a terabyte of cloud that you can use for transmitting and sharing and sorting files, especially when you're in an area that has terrible upload speeds. So if I have to suffer through someone, if I share, say I share a photo album with my family, I can send them to a link created specifically from my NAS. But then if I get 4 members of my family trying to get those files, I'm sending to 4 different directions with 20 megabit per second upload speeds because cable broadband in the United States sucks. Or I can suffer through uploading that photo album once and then send them the OneDrive link, and then I don't have to worry about multiple people hammering my upload connection. So again, right tool, the right job. For my own personal use, and especially for my local area network, and when I'm interacting with my own files on the go, and it's just me to my home network connection, it's great. It's awesome. But there are times where I want to offload that experience, and it's pretty great. See, Simon Says Hypno has the info here. It's $11 per month according to Grok. So again, the AI would know what's going on with other AI. Joshua W saying it's 199 point. It's a 199.99 pound a year for Google at 5 terabytes. So I'm not spending that much on 5 Microsoft 365 accounts. That's not what we're doing. I'm spending demonstrably less than 200 pound a year. So I don't know how that translates to other regions and areas. I could look it up right now, but I don't feel like it. I'm very upset with how Google is managing their own cloud services and solutions and how they're making it easier and easier for people to chew up more of their cloud so that then they can charge them more for more cloud. I had a miserable experience working with Apple recently. Actually, not working with Apple recently, dealing with Apple basically scamming my grandmother over iCloud accounts. This is not great. And so far out of all of this, the one that still seems to be the most reasonable deal that I found has been the Microsoft 365 family plan. So yeah, that's where we're at. All right. You know what? I don't want to cover this one anymore. This was depressing. I was going to bring up that the Starship failed reentry. So a fire broke out. Starship, on its seventh launch, basically just turned into debris and fell back to Earth. It was really upsetting. I've been watching a whole bunch of like Apollo 13 and Fly Me to the Moon and all these kind of heartwarming stories about the 1960s and the space race and all the amazing things that we accomplished. Um, I kind of wrapped up a binge on For All Mankind, which is an incredible show. One of the best, I think it is, it might be the best example of an alternate history that I've ever seen. Um, and again, it's like it's one of the first times where you change a few things and you make the USA the loser in this one aspect, but then the future that we might have gotten from that just looks so much better than the future we currently have. It's the first time it's like changing the past doesn't just immediately become dystopian. It actually becomes more utopian as we look at what the ramifications of this might have been if we had lost the space race to put a man on the moon. So this one just kind of came in depressing. We don't need to spend any time on this. I'll still include it in the links, but it just, as an old school nerd who desperately wanted to be an astronaut as a little kid, to work with robots in outer space, it just kind of breaks my heart that we've kind of given up on that aspirational idea of travel and exploration and science. And we live in an age now, kind of a dark age of distraction and entertainment and platforms where I don't know. I just think we could be better. So I'm gonna move that topic. Michael Peppertech out of nowhere. I just finished watching Game of Thrones last night. Disappointed. Oh, MPT. Oh, buddy. Yeah, I heard it was pretty bad. I never watched Game of Thrones. I made it through the first 2 episodes and then, yeah, this is not for me. So, while you catch up on television, MPT, I would highly recommend instead shifting gears and catching a show like For All Mankind. So, we're through the news. Uh, I think we need to shift gears and talk about some gaming. And it is crazy to me how long this product has been rumored and leaked, and we were supposed to be getting these refreshes. And it just speaks to the culture at Nintendo kind of understanding their market and understanding their audience to create one of the most dominating, profitable gaming experiences of all time. The Nintendo Switch is an absolute monster. And it is regularly something that I like to hold. I don't own a Switch and I don't really game anymore on Nintendo stuff. I kind of tapped out, myself personally, I kind of tapped out getting into the Wii era, excuse me, of Nintendo. That wasn't the gaming experience that I was really looking for. The Wii U definitely didn't scratch that itch. But there was something captivating about the Nintendo Switch. I was at Newegg. I was hosting shows with Trisha Hirschberger, and she was hardcore into the Switch. And I was very curious, maybe considering jumping on one. The idea of a Nintendo console that blurred the lines between the Game Boy experiences that I cherished as a kid. I loved Game Boys. And then the home console experience, I was very interested in. But 2 years into the run of the Switch, with it being at least a generation underpowered for its launch time, there were all these rumors coming out about a Switch refresh or a Switch Pro. Maybe it's just a slightly more powerful version of the Switch. Or maybe it's a Switch, but it's not a Switch. Maybe it's a home console that plays Switch games, but with more graphics, processing power, something like that. And years later, so I held off. I did not buy a Switch because I was waiting for some kind of refresh. And by the time that refresh arrived, what it was the Switch OLED. I'm not really counting the Switch, what is it, Switch Lite? It's not really a Switch. It's just a portable game console. It can't switch modes. It can't detach the Joy-Cons. The Joy-Cons, point of failure, not something I was looking for in a Switch Lite. But the Switch OLED arrives, and at that point, now we're talking about a renewed interest in portable PC gaming. And like right here, I got it nearby. Obviously, Steam Deck really changed my relationship with PC gaming. I mean, this absolutely worked on me in much the same way that I have to appreciate that the Nintendo Switch silos a user into using Nintendo services, buying Nintendo software, that whole digital experience from a good piece of hardware can really encourage a new relationship with an entertainment medium like gaming. And the Steam Deck totally worked on me. But the Steam Deck also kind of helped illuminate one of my issues with console gaming. I was just talking about this with Lex. So Lex's friends, a lot of them have Nintendo Switches, and she's a little contrarian like I am. And so she'll say things like, oh, well, we don't have a Switch. My dad has a Steam Deck. And some kids know what that is, and some kids don't. Some kids go, oh, it's not as good as a Switch. And then some kids will be like, oh, wow, you've got a Steam Deck. It's just kind of funny how even at 9, we're putting this kind of marketing and perception on these different products, and different groups of geeks are already starting to delineate in grade school. But the Steam Deck helped illuminate for me, one, I'm kind of a patient gamer. I'm really not the guy who jumps on a game day and date, tries to milk the experience to be a part of that tip of the spear, all the people in the know. I don't really game with that kind of pressure anymore. In recent memory, the only game that I jumped on quickly in that regard, and I wasn't aggressive on it, I was just like in the first month that it released, was RoboCop. Best shooting gallery game of all time. So as much as I've kind of sat back and I miss some of those Nintendo first party experiences, the Switch 1 and the Switch OLED have really kind of highlighted for me. I do care about things like performance, processing power. It matters to me that a game might chug in some kind of way, and I'm looking for experiences that kind of alleviate some of that. Intellectually, holding up a phone, knowing that it's an order of magnitude more powerful than a Nintendo Switch, kind of bothers me with Switch 1. Like, I know what this experience is focused on, and I know how it's refined, and I know that developers have gotten incredible experiences out of this lower power hardware, but it's also difficult for me to spend the money on that hardware late into its development cycle and know that my game experiences are also still going to be incredibly expensive. Because that's been the takeaway. Steam Deck got me back into PC gaming in a radical way. I've got this big beefy workstation in front of me here. Now it's rocking a 4070 Ti. It's a decent GPU. I mean, this is a powerful system. I hate playing games in my office. Where I work, I don't like gaming because it just sort of now starts to feel like more work. And especially if I'm not like carefully cultivating the gaming experience, then I'm distracted by work just being in this room. And Steam Deck took me out of that. And especially for the games that I like to play, like you don't need 4070 Ti for Tetris Effect, for Hades, for Dead Cells, really good platformers and roguelites and those indie and pixel art games. I got Children of Morta is awesome on a Steam Deck. And for those few times that I've needed the beefiness, I can Steam Link. So I run the game from this workstation, and I have played a lot of RoboCop on my Steam Deck, not natively rendered by the Steam Deck. So that really got me back into PC gaming. And as I was getting back into PC gaming, it is wild how much less expensive the PC gaming experience is now. Steam Deck is a pricey bit of hardware, but it's not a gaming laptop. It's not a gaming PC, and it delivers a great performance per dollar that easily goes head to head with something like the original Nintendo Switch. And then I can buy games on Fanatical. I can buy games on Humble Bundle. I can wait for Steam sales and get real sales on these things. And I keep looking over at like the Nintendo counterpart to all of this, and especially on third-party games, there might be a crazy great sale and it's like $5 off. And then I go over to Humble Bundle and it's like, I just got 15 games from this one developer for 20 bucks. I did the twin stick shooter pack. And I've got all of these like top-down twin stick action adventure games, some of them roguelitey, some of them more linear, and it was $15. I've got more games than I could play literally over the next 6 months. So there's a Nintendo experience in here that I just think is so incredible. It is so well honed. It brings back the nostalgia. If you're really into those like classic NES and SNES kinds of experiences, like it's kind of wonderful. It is really lovely. There is like a piece of hardware. I've got the little Super Nintendo Mini over there, which is basically just, I don't know, it's like a Raspberry Pi emulating a Super Nintendo. Like, Nintendo hates emulation except for when they can make a whole bunch of money on it. So that was all a rambling diatribe to get us into this announcement here, which is really low info. So here's the actual Nintendo website, nintendo.com/successor. That's the URL. And there's just this little teaser trailer. Here, I'm going to screen share this, and I'll probably get Nintendo lawyers on me just for like showing you a Nintendo property on a video. Let me make sure I get the audio here. And it's a 2-minute video, and it starts with the big Nintendo red. I should scooch this up so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. And so we take the original Nintendo Switch and we pop off the Joy-Cons, and then we start building the Switch 2. The screen gets bigger, we change the material, the casing isn't glossy anymore, we cut out these strips for the Joy-Cons, we add a USB port on top and on bottom. I'm really excited to see dual ports. There's still a headphone jack because it's always correct to have a headphone jack on a mobile device. And then they show off the little kickstand, which we've seen on things like PC-based portable consoles. The Joy-Cons get a little bit bigger, a little bit broader. And I also think it's really funny that Nintendo is showing off just a light color accent. So there's kind of a pinkish hue on one Joy-Con and a bluish hue on the other Joy-Con, but predominantly this is like slate PC black and gray. And it's crazy to me because so many people are making noise about this, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Nintendo's getting rid of color. And now there's this idea that these might be able to turn into mice. So they show the Joy-Cons kind of rolling around, and there are going to be sensors on the connector edge. So you kind of hold it upright. I'll be curious to see if we can really make some fun gaming experiences out of that. That could be kind of cool. But more shoulder buttons and triggers, and then boom, switch 2. And it's this gray black rectangle with just these light color accents. So who here really thinks that this is going to be the only flavor of the Switch 2 that exists? Think about all of those people that are freaking out about this trailer, this announcement for the Switch 2, and they're acting like, oh my God, Nintendo doesn't have colors. I think within 2 months, Switch 2 is released. People can really buy it. We're going to go 2 months, and then there's going to be some kind of collector edition or some type of retail pack where you buy this Switch and it's paired with some popular game. If it's a new Mario Kart, if it's a new Zelda, there's going to be some character edition of the Switch 2 in 2 months. That'll be completely different colors. It'll be completely different style and aesthetic. The box art is going to be different. And then from there, we're going to see a slow and steady trickle of, do you want a classic Switch 2? And it's all the colors of the original. Do you want a Super Nintendo Switch 2? Again, it's silly to me. Like, we're so preoccupied just by like the immediate thing that's right in front of us in this moment right now. No colors. Remember when Nintendo did colors? This looks just like a Lenovo. DTNL. This Nintendo's for the working man, the businessman, the man who wakes up at 4:30 a.m. and goes for a jog, the man who trades thousands of dollars of stocks in the morning before you wake up to have your first cup of coffee. This Switch 2 is about getting the business done. Always be hustle grind setting your way through your portable gaming experiences. But you don't have to take my word for it. Yeah, PP Joker saying, yeah, I've been into indie games more often now too. It's I don't know. There's so many really, really good games. It's almost like it's a good problem to have because I'm going through just installing tons of games, kind of poking through. Do I like this? Is this a little too role playery? Do I want something kind of Chrono Trigger? And man, it's just an embarrassment of riches right now. Oh, there are a bunch of people talking about Game of Thrones. Yeesh. Oh, from Tanmay. I always enjoy certain Nintendo-specific games. It's never about the hardware. It's always been about the Pokemon titles for me. Again, that's kind of what I'm saying is like, I absolutely miss those first-party experiences. But I also look from outside and like, I have to be really selective. Do I pick up a Switch for more Twilight Princess-y kinds of Zelda games? Because I'm really not the features and the game modes and the benefits of something like Breath of the Wild don't really appeal to me. I'm not the guy who likes running around in Genshin Impact. That is not the style of world combat fantasy RPG that I'm interested in. So that cuts a major part out of the value of a Switch for me. And then I start playing like some older PC titles. Like, so again, here's what's silly. Not a big fan of that kind of Genshin fantasy action combat setup. But then I went and reinstalled Prototype and Prototype 2, and I had this big nostalgic kick on those loose, somewhat open world action sci-fi combat games. So if you remember, there was this like battle. I think the Infamous series was the better series, but I really liked the combo chaining and evolution of combat in Prototype. The story in Infamous, absolutely better. The series, absolutely better. But there was something about the mechanic and how you would build through the game to becoming incredibly powerful at the end of the game that just clicked with me on Prototype. So I'm here and I'm talking trash about Breath of the Wild, but I absolutely have enjoyed open city games, but they're more sci-fi and horror based than they are fantasy or ARPG based. So I'm kind of a hypocrite, is basically what I'm saying. But once you step outside kind of some of those core areas, it gets harder and harder to justify. So my daughter loves playing some Mario Kart, but she's actually got more of an affinity or more affection for Sonic. So when she wants to play a racing game, she doesn't like unprompted. She doesn't request a Mario Kart, she requests Sonic Team Racing. Her friends are really mixed. There's a diverse, like yes, there's lots of Nintendo, but characters like Sonic are actually more popular than characters like Mario in her school right now. So Pokemon is wild, but Pokemon, a lot of those experiences can also be accomplished from a phone, right? You know, the attachment to the IP, it gets harder and harder for me to say like I need this piece of hardware to play these first party games because I really care about that exclusivity and I really want to have those experiences when so many of those experiences can also be had in other properties or in other franchises and then on a more diverse collection of hardware. And what we can do moving our gameplay from something like a Steam Deck right up to a gaming PC that we've got plugged in behind our living room TV and we're acquiring all those games in ways that are significantly less expensive than the way that Nintendo makes you shop for games. So I'm very excited to see Nintendo finally take the wraps off this, but I'm really anxious to see where does this experience position itself in a current console climate where Microsoft and Sony are pushing even further apart in terms of their messaging. Like Sony really cares that you're buying the most powerful box that you can. And Microsoft has really struggled to be in any way competitive in that big powerful box that lives under your TV and it's really expensive. So much so that now the big Microsoft, the Xbox talking points are all things like everything's an Xbox. I've got Game Pass. Anything with a web browser can be an Xbox. Maybe not the best Xbox, but any game that's in that browser, I can just play in any way that I want. If it's on a phone, if it's on a tablet, that's an Xbox now. That's an Xbox now. That's an Xbox now. So do I need the big computer under my TV? Do I need the PlayStation 5 or the PlayStation Pro? Well, maybe not. And again, I'm saying this wholeheartedly acknowledging that I've got a ninth gen Intel Core i9 paired with a 2080 Ti in a tiny little mini enclosure behind my TV, which is a pretty significant amount of compute power. we only aspire to 1080p gaming on our 4K living room TV. It really hasn't been a pressing need for us to try and accomplish 4K gaming. As long as that 1080p is looking really good, we can turn up the quality and keep the frame rate high, then the 2080 is doing us fine. But I am also just kind of, it's kind of interesting to me where we see each of these companies making their arguments. And Switch 2 looks like a quality of life improvement. It doesn't look like an argument in favor of increasing processing power to deliver some kind of specious metric on quality. That was an almost AI word salad right there. Like, it's not processing power for the sake of processing power, because this is also something that needs to be able to run off of batteries. Is a problem when you look at some of the more powerful PC handhelds, right? Is, yeah, you can make this thing more powerful and then you can game for 30 minutes and then you're done. Or you've got to find a way to plug that thing in. And I think Nintendo will probably approach this with a bit more balance in that conversation. And it's going to be nice to see any kind of performance improvement on a Nintendo Switch. But we know that this is not going to be directly competitive against new AMD APUs coming out for future Steam OS devices and Windows portable PCs. We know this is not going to dock and deliver anything like the experience you can get from an Xbox or from a PlayStation. And exactly to Tanmay's point, does that matter when you just want to play some Pokemon? Does anyone care about that if you want to play some Mario Odyssey? Is this front of mind when you just want to get a group of friends together and Mario Kart? Because I don't think it does. But how do we conceptualize that? I don't know. Now I'm rambling, so I should probably stop talking for just a second and see what other comments might be there, because this is a big deal. Switch 2, we have been talking about a Switch 2 since the launch of Switch 1. It's wild to me that this is one of the most rumored and least credible news stories that we've had year after year after year. We've been saying the launch of the Switch 2 is going to be happening next year for like 7 years now, at least. Yeah, sorry, I had that joke from Aditya there, but oh, and Tanmay went to bed, so Tanmay missed all the me talking about what they're saying. P Joker, I think there's going to be multiple colors for sure, but not this year. Okay. I'm putting it out there. I feel in the first fiscal quarter of release that we will see a collector edition or a special edition or different Joy-Cons that you can buy and attach to your Switch. I think it's in months. Once you have that initial surge of people who have been kind of holding back, waiting for a new Switch, once you fulfill that first burst of demand and you get through all the scalpers, then I think Nintendo's going to say, "Oh, well, we've got to have this version or your Zelda edition or your Mario edition." And I think we're going to see that pretty quick. From Mr. Maug, I hope we get to hear Juan talk about the alleged specs of the Switch 2 hardware. I don't have good sources on that. Let's literally, what's in the Switch 2? So Engadget saying, here's everything revealed. I mean, as far as I know, what we're looking at is a sort of a refreshed NVIDIA SoC that is not going to compare against a modern phone. And again, this is what drives me crazy, is everyone wants to say, well, this is a phone, and this is a tablet, and this is, I've got one over here, and this is a laptop, and they're all different. And all I care about is compute power. If the compute power of the phone can beat the compute power of the tablet and match the compute power of my old laptop, that laptop that I just held up, that was an 8th gen Intel Core i7, which is less powerful than this phone with the Dimensity 9400. Take that chip, put it into something with a decent screen and some controllers on it, and we've played with this a few times in the past. Like, for example, here's the Razer. So this is a little Razer mini tablet with a Razer Kishi that snaps onto the sides of it, and this is a fantastic gaming experience. It runs Android, so you've got to use Android games, but even with the slightly older, circa Snapdragon 888 internals, with the active cooling, it's still an excellent gaming experience that is demonstrably more powerful than a Nintendo Switch. We just need developers to make some software for this. This is already a thing that will likely compete well against the Switch 2 in terms of just processing power. That new NVIDIA SoC doesn't look like it's going to be a revolutionary change to mobile processing power, and I'm betting you that Nintendo was probably more concerned about battery life out in the field than it is, can we make this directly competitive and powerful and performant against newer AMD APUs? That's not what this thing is going to be. So that to me is like where I really have a philosophical problem with the way that we talk about gadgets. I'm testing new phones. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is a great chip. I think the Dimensity 9400 is a better chip, but you fire up a game and you're like, this is stunning. A game that's properly published for Android and making use of these mobile GPUs and these mobile SoCs, and they look incredible. And we're getting, 1080p gaming at 60 frames per second on pretty graphics rich types of titles, and you have to work harder to find those games that are published well, like the games that aren't just like gambling mechanics and gotcha thievery. But I can't tell you. I've been playing Grid Legends. That is a good racing game. I'm so used to arcadey and kart racers that Grid kind of takes itself a bit more seriously, but it's still got these like kind of hijinky full motion video sequences that remind me a lot of like Command and Conquer. The new Doctor Who is in Grid Legends, is like one of these other drivers on your team, and he's just charming and awesome, and I love him. But I'm playing it on a phone, and I've got it attached to. I'm going to be at some point. I will get a video out on this. The new GameSir controller, and I've got a little mount for it. And I've got the phone up there, and it's this gorgeous OLED. And I don't think the game. I think the game is kind of peaking at 6 frames per second, but that's a console quality experience, literally, in a little portable phone controller combination. And it looks great. It looks so good. And that's where I get kind of a little wild on all of this. There's a platform argument for Nintendo to manage this experience, and I appreciate someone wants the ease of use of the Nintendo ecosystem in a very Apple-like way, and that's how they game. And they'll probably never know that they're paying a lot more for a lot of the same games on that Nintendo if those games were available on other platforms. But that's the price of doing business and having that Nintendo experience. If we could just get developers a little bit more interested in the incredible quantity of compute power that's in everybody's pockets right now, we could be bringing more of those game experiences over to other devices. Blasphemous just came out. The best way to play Balatro is mobile. Play Balatro on a Steam Deck or on a PC, and it's a good game. Play it on touch with swipes on a phone, it is a better game. It is a better game for moving to a touch screen. Slice and Dice, I'm trying to remember even just like my top games of the year. I put out a video, best games of 20 that were released for Android in 2024. But yeah, Grid is consistently blowing me away. It's a really fun, not authentic. It's not like Gran Turismo, but it's a really fun, authentic racer as opposed to a kart or an arcadey racer. And it looks so good. It looks so good on mobile. So I'm going to be really curious. Like Switch 2 comes out, and it's going to be less powerful than most of our phones and most of our new phones and tablets for 2024 or 2025. And why? Why is it such a stumbling block to get more developers to at least consider mobile as the last life for their games? There's some really great games that, again, you get to the end and you're like, oh, this is the last place we could put it out and still make some money on it. Even that is a huge boon to the mobile community. So I don't know. I don't know what gets people away from this box is different than this box because they're shaped different. When really it should be, this is a bucket of compute power and that's a bucket of compute power. They should be able to do similar things. I'm kind of over this compartmentalization of what is the shape of your computer, and that's what has the biggest difference in how you use it. Because if it's a phone, if it's a tablet, if it's a mini tablet, if it's a portable game console, if it's a desktop, if it's under my TV, or if it's under my desk, none of that matters. It really doesn't matter. I'm playing games on everything. Michael Peppertech, I see a title, quote, I won't switch to the Switch 2. Well, and also think about it. Again, the pressure of portable gaming in this space, how many people are talking about and how many headlines are focusing on things like backwards compatibility. That's wild to me. My Steam account has games from what? I think I started earnestly buying games through Valve around Orange Box. So was that Half-Life 2? Yeah, so I think that was like one of the first things that I remember. I bought the boxed version, the orange box, Half-Life 2 and Portal, and I had a code to put that into my Steam account. And that's when I started building a Steam library was during Orange Box. And there are very few games in my digital collection, in my online collection through Steam and through Good Old Games, GOG, that can't run on my current PC. I'm trying to think, like even silly things like I did a bit of a replay. The game really hasn't held up as well as I remember it, but Vampire the Masquerade, I'm just so sad that my vampire franchise is still languishing in development purgatory. I really want there to be a good uh, World of Darkness vampire game again. So I went and fired it up. I was like, oh, this game actually has aged pretty poorly. And it was kind of a chore. So I got Vampire the Masquerade on Good Old Games. And on Good Old Games, they have, like, here are the links to download the things that you'll need to get this game running on a modern PC. Because if you just install a game, it's not going to work. But even then, I can still do it. So this idea of backwards compatibility to me has always been crazy, and it was one of the things that absolutely chilled our game buying on PlayStation. Going from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, and how few games of ours could make the transition. And that was really kind of like the breaking point for us, where I could point to my PC. I wasn't gaming a whole lot on my PC, but any of those old Steam games, I could still download and install. Why would my more powerful PlayStation 4 not be able to include some of these experiences from my PlayStation 3, especially when a lot of those games were download only, and it it really rubbed us the wrong way. So while we had a library of games for our PlayStation 3, my wife and I, the PlayStation 4 ended up becoming a Tetris machine until we got a PC that could also play Puyo Puyo Tetris, and then we kind of gave up on our PS4. Actually, the PS4 we gave to my nephew. Very recently, they had some issues and some financial hardships, and like, we've got this box, just wipe it out. Yeah, he's not going to love it as much as if we'd gotten him a brand new PlayStation 5, but like, we're not doing anything with it. And it was like a moment like, well, should we? I mean, what if there's a game? You know what? PlayStation 5 has been out for a while now. There's just nothing that we're really that, let's give him the PS4. Jeez, like, let the kid enjoy it. So anyway, it was silly. Michael C. Michael Peppertech finally finished Game of Thrones 6 years later, and I am still not over it myself. Oh, Tanmay came back because I said prototype. Ah, sorry, I'm way behind on the chat. Tanmay probably went back to sleep again. Prototype is one of my all-time favorites. I love that game. It plays so well on the Steam Deck. It is great. And again, it's one of those where you can look back. The story does not work as well, especially into Prototype 2. The graphics do look a little chunky, but on a Steam Deck, it looks pretty good. I mean, you don't have to turn everything down to potato quality to get it to run at good frame rates. It's one of those that, like, go back to that era of open city exploration combat games, Infamous and Prototype, And if you're in a lull, there's so many games out there, this is probably not going to happen. But if you're ever in a lull and you want to revisit something with a little nostalgic kind of twist to it, Infamous and Prototype, phenomenal. And you can see the the sort of the DNA. You can see some of the experiences percolating that will eventually get us to a good Spider-Man game, right? I'm playing Prototype, and I remember playing Prototype thinking, this is the best Spider Man game we've never gotten. Why doesn't Spider Man play like this? Why, Prototype, you have all these weird, like, mutation abilities that are totally Venom from Spider Man. I mean, it's spot on. You can absolutely see where the developers were like, well, we can't do Spider Man, but, you know, what if like your arm like morphed and reached and grabbed someone and then whipped them into a wall? Like Venom does. Okay. People are talking about their favorite endings in the show. The Shield had a great finale. Breaking Bad had a good finale. Simon says, Hypno, the Larry Sanders Show had a brilliant ending. That it did, but I feel Bob Newhart probably had better endings to their sitcoms. Yeah, you guys are still talking about TV. I can catch up on this pretty quick. Tangential Tesseract. I'm looking forward to the next NVIDIA Shield using the same SoC. LOL. Because I guarantee you, the folks at NVIDIA are probably not thrilled that one of the main consumer-facing products that they're putting out right now is an underpowered SoC for Nintendo. And I think this is going to double down. So we're pretty confident that we'll see some kind of partnership into this next year announced. Maybe not products shipping, but announced of MediaTek working with NVIDIA. And this is kind of a big deal because MediaTek makes some incredibly powerful SoCs, and their GPUs are pretty baller. In fact, the GPU on the Dimensity right now is more powerful overall than the GPU on Qualcomm, the Adreno. But if you're worried about that gamer bro crowd for your ARM PCs coming into the future, NVIDIA is going to want some higher prestige in the power performance conversation. And that, I think, is going to be what the parent is, yeah, here's like the MediaTek SoC, and it's got its own iGPU, which is vaguely, roughly as powerful as like, I mean, if you believe benchmarking scores, which you shouldn't, it's close to what AMD is doing with 8000 series laptop chips. So, like my Ryzen 8800, that little mini PC that I've got, the GPU in a Dimensity is closing in on those kinds of scores. Again, that also comes down to game optimization and software and developers, the operating system that you're running, blah, 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 blah. But what if you also had like an NVIDIA 5060 stapled to that Windows on ARM PC? So you had the iGPU, just like an Intel machine, and then you had the dedicated GPU with that NVIDIA performance, and that machine was coming in at like $1,500. Now you got yourself a more tangible argument for calling that a gaming laptop, and you get the benefits of that performance per watt from an ARM chip. So I'm thinking NVIDIA probably won't make a ton of noise about Switch 2. I don't think they're going to want those kinds of comparisons attached to the NVIDIA name when we're pretty confident they're going to have some other products and some other partnerships coming out soon. From Darren, Switch 2 is supposed to be equivalent to a PS4, I heard. And honestly, that would be pretty good. I mean, think about the kind of gaming experiences you have on a PlayStation 4 are not eclipsed by a PlayStation 5. So many of the titles on PlayStation 5 are cross-compatible. They still need to run on PlayStation 4s. So if you could turn a PS4 portable and keep that price point reasonable, I think you're in pretty good shape. Like what you can craft as a gaming experience on a PS4 versus a Steam Deck, like that, the improvements in technology didn't make game fidelity better. It improved the performance per watt. So you could achieve similar gaming at 720p and 1080p at much lower power draw. And Nintendo is going to get yet another generational improvement to that performance per watt. So if it's PS4 quality, I think that's pretty good. I think we're in really good shape. Michael C. I've been buying GameCube games because I realized you can play them on the Nintendo Wii. Took me years to figure that out. Just grabbed Madden '06 and MVP Baseball '05. That was peak sports era gaming. Again, how wild is that? What a huge perk, and then also something that we just don't talk about at all. But now, because of PC gaming, Nintendo is actually making noise about things like backwards compatibility. Yeah, MPT. ETA Prime's coverage on emulation on different devices is great. It takes more technical know-how than most people probably have or want to take the time to do, though. So, but that's just it, though. So, I just referenced, I've got the little Super Nintendo Mini over there. That's game emulation. Consumers can still benefit from this, even if they aren't the ones installing emulators and finding ROMs and fine tuning and using these kernels and this plugin and this setting and this frame rate and this save and blah, 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 blah. Consumers still benefit when we have some periphery of tinkerers working on emulation tech, because then it improves other products and services. I'll also hold up. Think about the entire Neo Geo collection. I, Prime, classic, 16-bit era games, they're all available on Google Play. So there's nothing fancy about that. What is the game ROM from the Neo Geo paired with an emulator and wrapped up in an APK. So once we nerds who are using emulators have created the market that they would like to see, and there is nothing stopping Nintendo from taking Super Mario for the NES and pairing it with a Nintendo emulator and wrapping that in an APK and selling that for $9.99. And think of all the people that would buy it. There is nothing stopping Nintendo from taking Yuzu, the emulator for the Switch, and wrapping game ROMs into APKs and selling that for $59.99. And now you can play it on your phone. But of course, that's because they're trying to protect this idea of what the Switch represents and this sort of singular market. And doing business with Google and Apple, well, that means having to pay extortion rates on developer costs. Nintendo isn't going to give 30% of their software licensing sales to Google. That's never going to happen. But the tech, there's nothing stopping us from doing it in tech. There's nothing stopping us from accomplishing this. And then there's the worry that, let's say you do that. Let's say you put Mario Kart 8 in an APK and you sell that to someone and they can just install it on a reasonably new phone, say a phone from 2023. And then it plays better than it can on the Nintendo Switch, makes Nintendo look bad. Oh, Bionic Scoop. That takes me back. I want a good remastered Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. There are a lot. I think there would be a lot of really fun games to revisit and then remaster. I see how successful the Resident Evil games have been with remakes and remasters. Or Final Fantasy, same thing. Like, just an entire ecosystem of gaming revisiting some of those old titles. And yeah, Legacy of Kain would absolutely be on that list. Yep, Tanmay, absolutely. Prototype was my Hulk meets Venom game. Depending on your build, like you could just like tank your way through everything, or you could kind of Spider-Man and like kind of flit around, and you could be a little bit more acrobatic. But I loved kind of comboing and just like I'm down on the ground and I'm wrecking all these people and I'm swinging all this stuff around and I'm eating these guys and getting energy out of them. so good. It's so good. I highly recommend. Just go take a revisit on Prototype. It holds up way better than I was expecting it to. Do do do. Oh yeah, and a bunch of people talking about things like Rockstar. So when we had the GTA trilogy remastered, those were terrible. But again, I like they're not good, but you can play them all. Like what? There is in my brain, and I don't know if I have this right. There are different versions of GTA. That the versions on Google Play are different than the versions on Netflix. But I might have that wrong. So don't quote me on that. But GTA available for Android. I wasn't the biggest GTA fan, but there's nothing stopping us from bringing games like that to Android. And when you see Alien Isolation and Grid Legends on an Android phone and how good those games look, we can do better than the GTA trilogy. We can bring much more recent games to mobile and directly compete with a phone, directly compete against Steam Decks and Lenovo Legions and ROG allies. Like our phones are nipping at the heels of what these portable consoles can do. Oh, Barry Johnson. I was literally playing the Metal Slug series last night. So good. So I just got the Castlevania collection. So for platformers, I'm going to be going old school Gothic for a while. I ran through Dead Cells and I played a little through Blasphemous. Blasphemous just doesn't have the same hook in me that Dead Cells had. But the whole like side component, there's a Castlevania campaign for Dead Cells, and there's a Castlevania campaign for Vampire Survivors. And I kind of was like, you know what? I think I need to stop pretending and just go play old classic Castlevania. And there was a sale on the Castlevania Legacy Collection. So yeah, I can absolutely vibe with like maybe pick up some Metal Slug or Contra. You can play some old school Contra. There are PC versions of Blaster Master, just an absolutely stunning game from the NES era of gaming, where it's like a combination of platformer and Zelda. And now you can play that as a slightly polished up PC experience, and again, plays great on a Steam Deck. Oh, Tanmay, there's also a proprietary emulator like Carbon that they can just release the games directly on, working with a porting house. It's interesting. So I've not been. That's something that I actually need to understand better, is how this market functions. But when you see something like I brought up two games, Alien Isolation and Grid Legends, and I have to shout out the team that brings those games to Android is Feral Interactive. Go to Google Play and look up Feral Interactive, and you'll see some great games. They're also responsible for the Total War series. They do a phenomenal job of not only bringing games to Android, but then quickly building the compatibility of devices. So like when Alien Isolation first dropped for Android, it was really limited what phones could really drive that game. And then over time, they've just opened it up. I've actually sent them numerous bug and crash reports based on brand new chips that they don't have access to. So like the game Alien Isolation crashed hard on Snapdragon 8 Elite and on Dimensity 9300 and 9400 when both of those chips first launched, and I had access to those chips before the developers at Feral Interactive did. So I was communicating with them and sending them crash reports and letting them know, hey, I've got this phone, it's under embargo, I can't really tell you much about it, but it's got a Dimensity 9400 and your game doesn't work. Oh no way, pure. It's like it's just totally dropping some knowledge bombs here. Legacy of Kain just got a remaster. They remastered 1 and 2 and they're available now. Scoop, get on that. Let me know. Let me know if that's scratching the itch for you. If they're really getting the what you wanted out of that. And Tammy is also saying I'm playing Prince of Persia game on my Switch. So good, so good. So Barry Johnson, Castlevania is always the correct answer. I had to stop. I was like, I love. There's this whole sequence in the Castlevania campaign for Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors is top down, right? and it's ludicrous. It's like worse than 8-bit graphics. But there are these sequences in the Castlevania map where you go through a door and it turns into a 2D platformer. And so instead of up being moving up on a map while you're looking top down, up is jump, which doesn't work right, but it works in the context of Vampire Survivors. And I'm sitting here, you have to do this little mini boss battle in this new vertical 2D orientation with your little character, and the you don't even attack because Vampire Survivors is an auto attack. But I'm doing it, I'm jumping, I'm dodging, I'm getting away. I finally beat this little mini boss battle, and I realized like I just got to play real Castlevania. I loved this one little sequence in this one map in this new like DLC campaign in Vampire Survivors. So I had to jump on that. Oh, and he also says Blaster Master is one of my favorite games of all time. Did you play? If you haven't, and I'm sure you have, if or you've at least seen it, get the Blaster Master Zero trilogy on PC. It is so good. It is so good. It fixes a few of the little mini quality of life issues that I had with the original Blaster Master. It makes some of the boss battles a little more difficult, but then it's a trilogy of Blaster Master games, just slightly spruced up graphics, but they still look kind of 16-bit. It's really good. You can see it was a huge labor of love for a game that I don't think ever got quite as much recognition as it deserved on the original Nintendo. Yeah, Michael C. I saw you posting about the Grid games that have one for 14 and one for $19, and then I think there's a free version. So yeah, I on launch day I bought Grid Legends, and I do not regret it. And again, it was pricey for an Android game, but it was less expensive than buying Grid for any other platform that you could play it on. So yeah, again, it's some really, really fun things. Sorry, I know that this was all in the context of being excited that there is finally a Switch 2 that exists, but this also kind of sparks in me when I see Nintendo walking into a refresh. I think they've absolutely chosen the right strategy. I don't think Nintendo needed to reinvent the wheel. I think we take the Switch, we improve some of it, we include some quality of life improvements, we fix the Joy Cons, we spruce up the experience a bit. But you don't want to alienate the incredible audience of people that were on the original Switch. So this one had to be a holding pattern, an iterative improvement. It's just wild to me how long lived the Switch has been and how the Switch 2 is already walking into this market, likely a generation out of step, just like the original Switch was about a generation out of step in terms of all the geekery things, the processing, the compute power, blah, 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 blah. So I'll be curious to see. I wonder if there is a super cycle of Twitch gamers or potential Twitch games, Switch, I said Twitch, a super cycle of potential Switch gamers that have not purchased a Switch and are looking to flip their old Switch or finally jump into the Nintendo ecosystem. I'll be curious to see how this is received. I think Nintendo, while I think they're doing this right, I am kind of concerned that they're doing this as quietly as they are. So I feel like this is a bigger deal. I feel like this is a bigger announcement. And to see Nintendo's launch trailer is very subdued. There have been few things in tech and gaming that have been as rumored and as anticipated as a follow up to the Switch. And I feel like Nintendo should probably be leaning into that, at least relief that it's finally happening, just a little bit more than that. So we'll have to see. So I think on that point we should probably start wrapping this up. Um, oh, one more from Michael C. Oh, actually, one more from Tan. Now, I'm sorry, Tanmay, I really can't get into this. What are some impossible ports you wish to see on the Switch 2? I think Switch and Nintendo in general still has some issues with how they work with third-party developers, and there are so many, I don't know, kind of like indie and also smaller budget. Like again, I look at a game like RoboCop, which is not AAA to the same degree, and there are some experiences you like that would be kind of cool if you could do, but anyway. So, Michael Ciasa, one more comment here too. I'm happy to pay for mobile, anything to avoid freemium. Otherwise, it just wastes my time fiddling through endless games trying to find one with controller support and not terrible monetization. I don't know. I mean, I've got a list of games on the Patreon that I have loved playing on mobile, and I don't really feel like, depending on what experience you're looking for, if you're looking for a first person shooter, if you're looking for third person action, if you're looking for battle royale, if you're looking for racing games, most of them have had some kind of controller support. I haven't run into many, especially like platformers and roguelites and stuff like that. So I understand, like, if you're stuck in the freemium or in the pay to win or in the gotcha mechanics, that can be kind of difficult. If you're judging controller support by Genshin Impact, well, obviously that developer supports the iPhone better than they support Android, so why would we give them any time, money, or attention? Go play games that don't. Or I should say, go play games by developers that do support the way that you would want to play the game. So I don't know. I'm just saying that on patreon.com/somegadgetguy, there is a list of Android games what don't suck. And the ones that you would want to play on a controller largely have controller support. And the few that don't actually respond really well to things like controller mapping. So again, just as I hold up my little Razer Edge here, there's a little Razer Synapse app that you can say, well, okay, map the control sticks here and put the buttons there. Not dissimilar from how we would do that on the LG V60 dual display, where you could use one screen as a controller and map that to controls on the screen. Worked really well. So anyway, folks, it's going to be a crazy week and a crazy month and a crazy couple of years. I don't feel the craziness is going to slow down anytime soon. I feel it's going to get more crazy and more exhausting, and it's going to get kind of rough. I think it's going to get pretty bad. So we got to keep our heads down. We got to keep doing the good work. And we got to keep looking out for each other because, like I said, it's going to get rough. I hope everyone out there is doing okay. I can hear the winds picking up pretty hard, and it is a little concerning. I know I've had a few audio and video dropouts during the stream. We do not have reliable utilities and data right now, and that makes me very anxious for how this next week is going to go. But we've got some cool stuff coming up. We've got lots of fun things to check out. There are videos on audio. Lots of audio products have been hitting recently and doing some really crazy cool things. Bone conduction has been a front of mind conversation again in a way that I'm really excited to see. And we've got some potential groundbreaking conversations to be had with heads-up displays and fancy smart glasses. I wish I could say whether or not I've been using some new smart glasses, but you'll just have to stay tuned. We'll just have to see how that goes. Folks, I hope you're all doing well, staying safe, because every region right now seems to have some kind of concern. So I hope you're handling those concerns well. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I want you to take care of yourselves so you can keep taking care of others and be that incredible tech neighbor that I know you can be. Catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. I love you all.